Feliz cumpleaños to everybody. Oh my gosh. My name is Peggy and I am a compulsive overeater and a food addict. And I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the GreySheet, and I commit those meals to my sponsor. And I don't eat in between no matter what. Abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And one day at a time, I work to put this program first. Anything I put before my GreySheet abstinence, I will lose. And I am here to build a defense against the first compulsive bite. That is my life commitment, to build a defense against the first compulsive bite. And congratulations, this has been just such a wonderful, wonderful celebration. It's hard to even know where to start, but let me begin where I always begin with my story, which is that if I can get abstinent, anybody can get abstinent, because I am the sickest, most addictive, compulsive eater you will ever meet. I am someone who just could not stop eating. I lived a life of cravings that drove me into danger. I am an addict when it comes to food. And the definition of an addict is someone whose brain has been hijacked by a drug. And I will do anything to get that drug, despite the terrible consequences of doing it. And that is the crucial part. It's not merely that I ate without being able to stop. It's that I ate despite the horrific consequences that followed from that kind of eating. And the consequences, of course, were obesity. I was almost, at one point, I was 270 pounds. I'm now just a fraction of that weight. I should start by saying, by the grace of goodness, a higher power in this fellowship, my abstinence date is December 28th, 1989. But I came into GreySheet in Cambridge. I am a product of Cambridge in 1979, and I will tell you that story of what happened in between. In fact, let me just start by telling you right now that with that terrible life of addiction, I had 2 stages of finding GreySheet, and I was just remembering it today. In 1975, I was in a desperate case, a desperate situation to stop eating, as I always was. I rarely talked about it out loud because I lived a life of isolation. I thought I was the only person that had this terrible disease. But I was in some kind of a therapy group situation, and I said, I have an eating problem. There I was, fat, like they hadn't figured it out. And somebody pulled out a GreySheet and they said, oh, my mother-in-law sister went to this thing called Overeaters Anonymous, and they gave her this food plan. And they showed me the food plan on the GreySheet, and it's the same GreySheet we use today. And I looked at the food plan, and here's this woman saying, my mother's sister, whoever, some stranger. And I saw, 3 little lines of food. And I said, are you kidding me? And that was it. I paid no attention to it. I said, that looks ridiculous. I could never live on that little food. So what that was an attempt of someone to give me the GreySheet without the GreySheet community. And without the GreySheet community, the GreySheet means nothing. This is not a diet. This is a program of connection and community and recovery and fellowship. 4 years later, in 1979, desperate again, I responded to an ad that said, do you have trouble with food? And I stumbled into a GreySheet meeting, and I heard not some stranger stick a piece of paper in my mouth, but I heard other people say out loud words that I'd never heard before, which were, I am a compulsive eater and I can't stop eating. And I was like, oh my God, for the first time in my life, I felt heard. And here's the strange, amazing paradox of this recognition. All my life, people had said to me, oh, you can lose weight. You can control your food. You're a smart person. You come from a smart family. You have power. You have the capacity to stop eating. Just go on a diet. And I felt so invisible. They were telling me a lie. I knew they were telling me a lie. They kept telling me, you can do it. But I knew I couldn't do it. And since I couldn't do it, I had to be a moral failure. When I came into a GreySheet meeting, they said, you can't do it. You're powerless. You're utterly powerless over food. And I thought, oh my God, I'm home. Somebody has heard me. I had been in a glass box my whole life, banging on the glass, saying, help me, help me, help me. And nobody heard. I said, I'm being destroyed, and nobody heard. They all said, you're smart, you're attractive, you can do this, you can do that. You went to college, you're in graduate school. And they didn't understand. And the first time in my life that I felt recognized as a human being was when they said, not that I was great, that I was smart. They said, you're utterly powerless. And I was like, oh my God, I love you. I love you. You hear me. I'm powerless over food. It makes no sense. I fell in love with this community because they told me I couldn't do it and that I had no power. It's all in the first step. And this is what Cambridge stands for. It stands for recognizing our powerlessness, which gives me visibility and recognition. And I was seen for the very first time. So what this tells you and what it told me, this is why we don't hand out the GreySheet without a sponsor. This is why we say, you come to a meeting, you make a connection. It's a meaningless piece of paper if it's not attached to this community. And that the moral of that story is that the opposite of addiction is connection. This is a community of recovery, only the connection of the fellowship. And that is the basis of AA. So what is Cambridge GreySheet? It's AA for food addicts. It's not a diet. It's for people who are addicted first and foremost to a substance. And that substance is sugar and carbohydrates. And what AA tells us is that the only way that you can be sober is if you reach out to another drunk. So the story of Bill W., who was the founder of AA, is that he heard about this program was called the Oxford Fellowship, and they believed in a higher power and all this stuff. But the most important thing they told him was, you need to be connected to somebody else. So he found himself in the middle of Ohio on a business trip, and he was trying not to drink, and he knew he was going to drink. So what did he do? He didn't call up somebody and say, help me not drink. He called up a hospital or a church and he said, find me a drunk. And they found him a drunk, and he went to that person's home. Thank you. Got it, Marcella. And he said, let me help you not drink. He said to the other person, what can I do to help you not drink? And that was the connection that was established. So let me just jump forward and say the secret to Cambridge GreySheet is that it teaches us that without GreySheet, I have no defense against the first compulsive bite. My cravings were such that they were like an itch that I would scratch and scratch until I bled, and it still itched. The bleeding would be everywhere, and I still itched. What happens with Cambridge GreySheet is that it says those cravings, they're not commands. you don't have to follow them, because in between the craving and the picking up the food, there's a world of community in between. There's a space full of other things to do. And so let me say in closing what Cambridge GreySheet teaches me. Cambridge GreySheet is all embodied in the mantra. A lot of people think the mantra means you're a part of a cult and I don't want to say it and I'm better than that and I'm embarrassed and it sounds like you're a zombie. And they don't understand the whole point of the mantra is to sound like everybody else. That's the whole point. I need to know that you are me and that I am you. Because if you're not me, I'm not going to call you because you don't have this disease and you can't help me. The mantra is what builds the connection. It's what says you're part of me. We are all part of this together. So it misunderstands by saying that it diminishes me. No, the mantra enlarges me because it enlarges the community, that I'm not alone. And what Cambridge tells me is that abstinence is a verb. It's a doing. It's not a being. I get to be abstinent only if I do abstinence. All of the little things, and it's all embodied in the scale. The scale is my first higher power. It is bigger than myself. It is something that gives me freedom in boundaries. This is the secret of GreySheet. It's the freedom to live my life because the scale is telling me your food is contained. That is insane, but it works. It absolutely works. The freedom is in the containment. I could never stay abstinent without the gift of desperation. I am a desperate case. And I want to thank you. There's no such thing as a slip. It's a crash into death. If I pick up the food, a crash into death. I went to any lengths to get food. Cambridge tells me I need to go to any lengths to be abstinent. Thank you for letting me share. And thank you for such a beautiful celebration. You have just made this whole world open up. It's beautiful. Thank you.